Hello everyone, Midlife Nerded here with my no spoiler review of Game of Thrones House of the Dragon. After getting Rhaenyra's name wrong in about 15 places in my review video yesterday, I decided to re-record it. What you'll be getting in this video today is a short no spoiler review of the episode and then some main points from the episode itself rather than a blow-by-blow account. So I hope you enjoy, strap yourselves in and let's get to it, shall we? So if you're anything like me, you'll have found that you were left a little bit jaded after season 8. That's all I'm going to call it, season 8. If you're new to the series or you never watched Game of Thrones, then perhaps not so much. However, I know that personally, when they said they were doing a prequel, is it going to be any good? Should I watch this? It's also impossible to tell what a series is going to be like from one episode. So I was really hoping that episode 2 would continue in the vein of episode 1. And whilst there's no nudity, there's a little bit of gore, but not a lot of violence in this episode, it actually holds up and does a lot for character progression and development, and also setting up the narrative arc, I think, of the main plot points. You just kind of know where this is going, and it felt like Game of Thrones, but it didn't feel like it was set in the same time period. It is actually managing to carve out a niche for itself. Let's get to the no spoiler review. In this episode, it's actually set around about 6 months after Rhaenyra was named heir. We see a lot more of the new antagonist, the crabby kind of people. Watch the episode to find out exactly what I mean by that. There's a little bit of gore as it starts off. There's lots of sitting in the council room and there's a lot of dialogue, talking. This episode really does develop the characters much more than in the first episode. There is some dramatic tension and there's a couple of scenes where you'll be like, which is great. I would also say that the production values are really good. I love the costumes, the setting's great, the cinematography's great. Westeros has really kind of come alive in terms of King's Landing. I really enjoyed as well some of the themes of this episode, both about family, duty and honour. I think there was some real kind of developments here. There's a couple of kind of points of the episode where I really felt that not having a particular character allowed another character to shine. I think Rhaenyra actually comes alive in this episode. I think she's far better portrayed. You get to see a lot more depth. And a real standout for me is Viserys as well, the king. He is actually great in this episode. It's a fantastic acting job from him as well. Daemon Targaryen, let's face it, every time Matt Smith is on the screen, he just steals the show. He really does. You can't take your eyes off him. He's doing a brilliant job at playing what was described in the book from some unreliable narrators as one of the most charming and roguish characters you ever could meet. The other thing that I really like about this episode is it's obviously made for grown-ups. It discusses grown-up themes in a grown-up way, and the writers, you never feel they're talking down to you. You never feel like it's almost like they have to lay everything out. Sometimes it's about what people don't say, and the writers know this, allowing the actors room to breathe and room to bring the story to life. Overall, I'd give this episode a strong, solid 7.5 out of 10. It's setting up the rest of the show for season 1 very, very well in terms of character development, establishing where exactly we're going with the story, and showing where the tension's going to come in. I didn't want to do the usual and just provide a blow-by-blow account of the second episode because I figure there's loads of reviews that do that and you can find that basically anywhere. So here's a quick reminder of the plot of the episode. I'm hoping you've seen it. There are spoilers. Six months after Rhaenyra is named heir, Daemon occupies Dragonstone whilst Prince Admiral Krahaz Drahar menaces the Stepstones at the Triarchy's behest. Meanwhile, the small council works to find a suitable match for King Viserys' remarriage in order to propagate his royal line, putting Rhaenyra's status as heir into question should he remarry. As Alicent Hightower continues to comfort King Viserys at her father's urging, Lord Corlys Velaryon proposes his own daughter, Lena, marry the king. Daemon steals a dragon egg to goad Viserys into coming to Dragonstone, but Hand of the King Otto Hightower volunteers himself instead. When bloodshed nears dangerously close, Rhaenyra shows up at Dragonstone on Syrax to retrieve the egg. Her disobedience angers the king, and father and daughter have a heart-to-heart about Queen Emma and the matter of his remarrying. Ultimately, Viserys announces that he intends to wed Alicent, angering both Rhaenyra and Corlys. Corlys, in turn, approaches Daemon to form an alliance. What I've done is put together a selection of my key points, and my key points for the second episode are as follows. Point number 1 is the growing enmity between Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, and Rhaenyra. She shows him up twice in this episode, once when she selects Sir Criston as the new member of the King's Guard, and the second time on the bridge. Speaking of dragon Mexican standoffs, I'll cover the bridge scene next. So Daemon has been naughty and nicked the dragon's egg that was supposed to be for Viserys' dead son. He's taken it back to Dragonstone Keep, where he's currently shacked up with Mysaria after announcing her wedding and her pregnancy. Otto Hightower sees an opportunity to get even with Daemon, and we get this really tense scene on the bridge, where Otto and Daemon are throwing insults at each other and swords are drawn. Daemon's dragon makes an appearance, forcing Otto to back down. And then comes Rhaenyra in on her own dragon. Cue Charge of the Valkyries music. She completely emasculates Otto in this scene. She lands, speaks to her uncle, gets the egg back and swoops off again, leaving him looking weak and ineffective. He also looks like he's raging inside, and I think he's really, really sick of the dragons. Whilst we're on this point, the chat on the bridge between Daemon and Rhaenyra, it's obvious there's something there, and I suspect at some point in the future there will be the kind of incest storyline. This is a prequel to Thrones, after all, and let's face it, in the first episode of that, we had brother and sister basically bonking in a tower and then throwing someone out the window. So it's not going to surprise me too much if these two end up together. My next point is still with Otto. I really don't like this guy. In fact, I like his character a lot less than I like Daemon. Matt Smith absolutely steals the scene every time he's in it and manages to paint a very grey and nuanced figure of Daemon Targaryen. Otto Hightower is manipulative and cruel. He's basically trying to prostitute his own daughter to get into the king so that he can ensure his power base. I just do not like this guy. I really don't like this guy. He does have one of those faces you just want to punch. And he just is manipulating everyone around him in terms of a power play. Well, let's talk about Viserys actually, as we've just covered that bit. So I thought the king's character was really brought to life and the actor did a fantastic job in this episode. However, in terms of the story beats, he spends the whole episode basically being told to marry the 12-year-old Valerian child and ends up going with his heart. This is directly after lecturing his daughter on duty to the realm. Yeah, I think there may be trouble ahead for him. There's a lot of foreshadowing here, especially with the dragon being dropped and broken and then it being given back by Alicent or mended again. There's some great, let's call it iconography or symbolism to a lot of these scenes. We also see him having to have his finger treated as he cut it on the Iron Throne at the end of episode 1. I think there's a bit of foreshadowing here, or maybe an allegory in terms of the Iron Throne is actually killing him. And I really liked the use of the symbolism. He has to stick his hand in a bowl full of maggots. It's absolutely disgusting, but hey ho. This is Game of Thrones after all, and I think they actually dialed down quite a lot of the gore for this episode. The two really gory bits were obviously involving the new crab people. Yes, crab people. I'm hoping if you're watching this video, you've actually seen the episode now. And the most outstanding kind of gory bits were with the crab people. I think there's sort of a supernatural element almost to the crab guy with some of his skin being covered in scales. So whilst we might not have the White Walkers, we do still have, something of a supernatural element to it in that respect, or a fantastical element, I guess. My next point is going to be on King Viserys again. I think he's a very conflicted character. He's trying to do the right thing, but I sort of agree with Daemon. He does come across as a bit weak in terms of the king's role. Daemon has a great line when the alliance is proposed in one of the final scenes of the episode where he's talking to Corlys Velaryon in their little fireside chat. I also think that there was some good character development here. You see, he loves his brother, and you can tell that Daemon loves his brother by the way that he tells Corlys Velaryon that whilst he may badmouth his brother, no one else can. Last but not least in terms of this video is Rhaenyra herself. She really does come across in this episode as a much more nuanced character. In fact, I felt myself warming to her an awful lot more than I had done in the first one. You have to contrast this with Alison Hightower, who comes across as wet and is picking at her nails every time she's nervous. These were really my standout points for this episode. I've tried to keep this nice and short and brief and only cover the things that really stood out to me. I know that you'll probably be able to get like 2-hour episodes reviewing every single look, smile, nudge, wink, whatever, but that's not the kind of reviews that I do. Thanks so much for listening. Please like, subscribe and hit that bell button.